Hey, welcome to Remotely Awesome. I'm Brian Carter, and this is.
I'm Garrison Wynn. I'm Garrison Wynn. Yeah,
That is
sure.
correct. And you
Yeah.
know what we're going to talk about today is how to motivate yourself, how to get motivated. Because, I don't know about you, Garrison, but I have to motivate myself every day.
I do. I do. I actually motivate myself every day. Sometimes every hour. Yeah, every
Yeah.
hour. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you have to motivate yourself every hour? What's wrong with you?
Well, it's consistency, Brian. I mean, I can motivate myself, but things change, and I think I think it's true that we probably feel differently hour to hour. I think it's a true thing.
That's true. So
Yep.
you're saying you're
Yeah.
moody. Is that true?
I'm saying that human beings are moody, Brian, and very few are as moody as you. By the way, which that
That's
statement proves.
true. I will tell you this. I feel like
Yeah.
one of the gifts that I have is that I get migraines, and people say that's not a gift, that's a
Right.
curse. Well, actually, let me tell you, it forces me to avoid migraines, to be regular every day, and I'm not talking about what you think I'm talking about. I'm talking about being regular in terms of my hours, my sleep, get
Right.
8 hours of sleep every day, do something recreational every day, do something useful every day, like
Right.
make use of myself. Even on the weekends, I'm, I don't, I found that if I just do nothing, I kind of start to hate myself by Monday
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and I get depressed. So I have to get up and do some work or do something home improvement or, learn something, you know, every day.
Well,
That's
I've actually learned something from your migraines, which is not to talk to you on those days. That's what I learned.
that's
I
true.
learned I should new day, different day.
That's not
That's what
the
I
only
learned.
reason. Sometimes I'm just grumpy and you can't talk to me that
Yeah.
day either. Yeah.
But you brought up a good point about grumpy. Sometimes we are grumpy and we look at life through just crap colored glasses. I mean, sometimes we're just looking at life through these dirty glasses.
Yeah.
And I think it's real possible to be grumpy and not know it,
Yeah.
to be disgruntled and not really actually know it. And sometimes we have to get honest with ourselves and say, hey, wait a second, maybe this isn't my best moment. This is not my best day. Maybe it's time to get real about how to motivate yourself and how to stay motivated. I
Yeah.
think that's what to do.
I know. And I think this is stuff you learn over time. Like when you have to do things like we both have done stand-up comedy, we both done keynote
Right.
speaking, we both have done sales calls. Those
Right.
are those all three of those things are things where you can go like, "Oh my God, I don't want to do that,"
Right.
But you learn ways to get over that. How do you create the confidence? How do you create the excitement? And it's different for each person. I'm a little bit
Right. It is.
more
I agree.
obsessive, so I need to prepare. Like with a sales call, I make sure I have a deck. I'll make sure I've written out the call outline and the questions. I've looked at the person's LinkedIn.
Right.
All the stuff I did was just to get over my mood that I
Right.
didn't want to do it.
But preparation is huge. Preparation eliminates fear. It eliminates anxiety. And I think if you get rid of fear and anxiety, I think you're more likely to be motivated.
Right.
I mean, as simple as that actually sounds, if you've got a lot of anxiety and fear
Yeah.
and you're trying to motivate yourself, that could be the block right there.
That's
You
right.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you got to have, everybody talks about goals, or you got to have a realistic goal. I think it's
Right.
funny right now. Anybody who had a 5-year goal, like in 2019, probably
Right.
had to change it recently.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
but you still got to have some hope. You got to have a direction you're going. You're going from here to where,
Right.
somewhere, because motivation literally means movement, right? So,
right.
yeah.
That's what the origin of the word is, movement. You're
Mhm.
hopefully moving forward. What you said is interesting because I think that sometimes we have to shift our goals when the world shifts, and that can be tough. It can be hard to stay motivated. Like you said, December 2019, my goal is to take over the world. And 2 months later, I would like to have a rice cake.
I'm going to pay my
rice
rent.
cake.
Yeah, right.
I'd like to pay the rent in rice with a rice cake.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I think that it is tough. And right now, there is this idea that somehow, and what I'm going to say right already, somehow that this is just something that's never happened. It's brand new. What are we going to do? It's a new version. It is a brand new version of something that happens like clockwork historically.
Yeah.
And that is, every now and then the world just takes a crash, Brian. The world just gets weird. Economies crumble. Problems
Yeah.
happen
Yeah.
all the time. What we do know for a fact is they come back. They often come back stronger. And we end up learning things and being better than we were. Historically, that's true. We can
Yeah.
try to spin that as negative as we want to. But that really is what history shows.
And there's a lot of similarities, between now and what you got to do to get motivated and what you'll have to do in 2 years. If somebody's watching this video 3 years from now and COVID's over and they're like, whatever, this is what's similar is we always have challenges. We always have problems. We always have a limited number of things that we can do to control our situation.
Right.
And so you got to know what those are, figure out the best one to do right now, work on it, and just then you kind of leave the results up to the universe, to other people. You can't control everything,
Exactly right.
So
and I think thinking that you can control everything can depress people. If the belief I can control everything, and then all of a sudden you have that day where you realize, hey, wait a second, I can't control everything.
Right.
And it freaks you out. But I will say for sure, if you don't have goals, you're just controlled by those who do. So you have to really say, okay, here are my goals, and they can be 5 goals. I have what I call big picture goals. Mm-hmm. And then I have the task goals to get me to those big picture goals. Yeah. And I might say, okay, I'm doing this for the year. I got to do this for the month. I got to do this for the week. That means I have to do this today. So there's a connection. Weekly, monthly, yearly, big picture. Yeah.
And sometimes, you really only can control certain things. The truth is you can control something first off, and you can control certain things. And there's something you can do today that's going to help tomorrow. And you always have to be willing to reassess where you're going to go, what's going on, what's working, what's not.
Right. So the other thing I was thinking about when I think about goals is sometimes I've heard we got to make our goals realistic. These goals have to be realistic.
Yeah.
There's a huge debate there. Sometimes when people say realistic, they say, okay, well, let me forget my dreams. And remember that goals are just dreams with deadlines, really. Let me forget my dreams and get some kind of realistic goal. I really think you have to have a mix.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that when I put some goal lists together, and I think I've told you about the 1999 goal list, I'm no one's more surprised than I am that stuff happened. But I think dreamy, pie in the sky stuff with some real practical stuff, I think you can mix it up. I don't think you have to take everything and chop it to pieces, but you also can't say, I would like to be president of the universe in a week, so.
Yeah, you're going to have to take over a lot of planets for that, for sure.
Yeah. I'm actually running for that, but go ahead.
What's your campaign budget, Garrison?
My campaign budget? It's everything.
I'm using
everything.
Else's money.
That's right, exactly right. Well, but I think it's an important thing to mix it up. It's okay to have some pie in the sky stuff. I think it really is.
I agree. I think, reasonable goals are important just because, I've had there's always something bigger that I've been working on. I wouldn't even call it a pie in the sky goal, right? When I wanted to be a keynote speaker, or when I wanted to do stand up, or when I wanted to run my own business successfully.
Right.
Once I got to those things, there was a time where it really became time to work on it, and there was an opportunity, there was a path for it. And then you just work super hard. I think let's just talk about some of the things that drain motivation, because I can tell you in the past, in my life, the things that when I've been most motivated and getting the most done, there are certain things I'm not doing. Okay.
Right.
Like heavy drugs or.
Yeah, right. I'm glad that you stopped that.
But more seriously,
I've noticed it.
watching 6 hours of TV a day.
That's exactly right.
What are you going to become? What are you working towards? How could you possibly, like a farmer is not going to get a lot of crops if they're not out in the fields, right? So that is correct. You're not in the fields. You're not doing any work if you're binging.
A farmer who's in downtown New York does not get a lot of corn. I don't know.
Right. Like if the farmer sleeps in till noon, works for 4 hours on his crops, and then watches 6 hours of Netflix while drinking and browsing Instagram, their crops aren't going to do very well. So
I want to say for the record that if I go with you on this really bad metaphor, what I say may not be good. So I want to say for the record that Brian drugged me down a cul-de-sac.
Oh,
metaphor.
It's my fault now what you say.
Totally your fault.
Go ahead.
No, but it's super important though. And as weird as it is, if you are a farmer and you're not on the farm, absolutely. But the other thing though that it's interesting, and it's a tough thing to talk about, is that are you really willing to take a look at what your ability is and does it match the goal? So when we talk about realistic goals, maybe we have to talk about, is it actually possible? Yeah. So if you're 46 and maybe have a bad leg, the chances that you're going to be a pro baseball player are kind of close to zero. Can you say that?
No.
Hold on.
No, man, I'm training.
Listen.
I got a dream. I got a dream.
Yeah.
I can see it.
But what I'm saying is I think a lot of people get depressed sometimes because maybe they just want something that is at some level not really statistically attainable, right?
Yeah,
so
it's go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to mix it up, but we have to be very, very careful because a lot of times, I mean, you remember there's a TV show called Star Search, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ed McMahon ran that show. And Ed McMahon said this, and it's the only thing I would ever quote from Ed McMahon, right? When I was a kid, I called him Egg McMuffin. Anyway, but what Egg McMahon said was, he said, if you come out here to L.A., do yourself a favor. Make sure you've got some talent. He said, talk to the people around you. And, of course, Ed McMahon, who had no talent at all, he just laughed at Johnny Carson. He was like very talentless. He sold Alpo dog food.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I think it's important. Sometimes we have to take a realistic look at it to make sure that we're not – I think it's easy to be demotivated if we're heading in a direction that really wasn't good for us to begin with. I don't want to tell people you can't follow your dreams, but it's possible that your dream is not something that is achievable in no matter what you do. So again, it's a balance of eye in the sky.
There's so many variables, right? Let's say, for example, you want to be a famous musician or artist or something, right? That's a noble goal, and
it is.
You may be able to achieve it. There are child prodigies who are already doing phenomenally with it at 13. So there's some of your competition. And then, like in my life, I've done a ton of things, whether it's comedy or art or music, that is very fulfilling for me. But some of it had very little chances. I could see after several years into it, very little chance I'm going to make money doing this. Right. And I examined the stand-up angle pretty heavily. Like I did a podcast for a while where I interviewed headliners. And I found out, wow, it's a tougher, even when you become a stand-up headliner, some of these guys are depressed because of what it really is like. And so I was very fortunate when I met Garrison, he said, hey, here's a way that you could do keynote speaking using your stand-up experience and abilities. And that became like a real job that actually paid, and I got to do what I love. So sometimes what's realistic is similar to your dream, but it's not exactly.
It is, But because I was a pro stand-up, I can say that if you're in a room full of stand-ups and they're all depressed, that means they're probably real stand-ups. Because as a rule, that's kind of common. I remember sitting around at this terrible cafe place in LA near the Comedy Store and just having breakfast at 3:00 in the morning with people who were, but as a stand-up, I think there's a negative spin, a negative look. I think the joke was it's impossible to be funny if you had a good childhood. No one with a good childhood is funny. That was what they always said. But I think that in that realm, it's tough. If you're going to be a stand-up, though, one thing I would say about being a stand-up, number one, it's not for everybody as far as what it feels like to do it. I did stand-up, and me personally, I felt it wasn't enough. Like at the end, for me, if you get a house laugh every 20 seconds, the club owner loves you, brings you back. If you don't, then they don't. And that really was, to me, all I saw that there was. You might do this, you might do that. Also, the fact that 6 or 7 out of 290 of us was getting a TV shot back in those days. So it seemed to be quite, and a lot of it was quite lucky. There's a lot of luck involved. You saw somebody on the Carson show who was nowhere near as funny as the person that you're on stage with that next night. Like,
let's go back to our topic. We just had to get motivated because it's turning into should you do your crazy dream idea or not? And
No, my point is,
yeah,
I need to clarify that I do believe that you should have a mix of realistic goals and maybe some things that aren't so realistic. It's
right,
okay to have both those things on
right.
there. But I was just saying sometimes we have to be realistic enough to where we don't want to set ourselves up for depression because we're
Yeah.
heading in this direction. That's all.
They're very different. I mean, these things are very different for different age groups too. I mean, like what you want to motivate yourself and achieve in your 20s may be different from when you're in your 40s and you have kids.
Yeah,
You know, like
absolutely.
you could
Absolutely.
maybe getting motivated to go to the job that you need to pay for your family to survive.
Right.
And that's a different thing. Um, but I think a healthy life. I never used to like this word balance, but a healthy life is work is work. It's called work
Right.
because it's hard. It requires effort. So you need to have enough motivation, enough energy for that, which means you have to take care of yourself. You have
Right.
to so that you can produce energy and inspiration. There's a lot of
Right.
things that kill that just physically, just not eating right,
Right.
not never going outside.
Right.
A lot of stuff that you
You're
have to
never
do.
going outside.
I didn't go outside. I have no vitamin D. Um, so that stuff is really important regardless of what
Very.
age you're at and what you're trying to get motivated for.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
you couldn't be more correct at that. I'm glad
That's
you
true.
said that
I
because
couldn't
it's
be.
hugely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian couldn't be more right on that. But it's really true though. I mean, it's very, very true. That
Yeah.
is absolutely that is the thing. Yep, I agree. But I thought one thing that we forget about sometimes is I think probably the number one way to stay motivated is to motivate others.
Hmm.
If you really want to stay motivated, it's about motivating other people. When you are trying to motivate someone else, sometimes it's quite difficult not to be motivated.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing. I
That's
think
true.
people can motivate each other. And if you're feeling down and having a terrible day, call somebody else who's having a worse day. No one makes me feel better than someone having a worse day than me. I know that sounds weird.
Yeah, just complain to somebody.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. What you're saying about a teamwork, I hadn't really thought about that. But if you're a good teammate, you are thinking about other people's moods and
Right.
motivation and problems,
Right.
challenges, all those kinds of things, and you're trying to put something more into the system, and it comes back to you because
Right.
if you're the negative Nancy, sorry Nancy,
Sorry, Nancy.
um,
How negative must Nancy have been that we now say negative Nancy? Whoever
was-
Nancy was, she was negative.
worse than Karen, evidently.
Yeah, lazy Susan. How lazy was she?
How lazy was Susan? Then if you're bringing everybody down all the time, I don't know. There are only so many people that are going to try and motivate you back. So
Yeah, that's true.
sometimes
That's
we
very
lift
true.
each other up. Sometimes we get lifted up.
Right.
Today, for example, I discovered that in email, you can add cute animal emojis. And since it was Friday, I just sent some really stupid animal emoji emails today.
Here you go.
We had a guy, we had this sales call. This guy didn't show up. And so I was just in a mood. I was like, I wrote him because he needs to reschedule. And a lot of times these no-show sales call never reschedule. So I just wrote him, hey, I get it. It's Friday. And I sent, I think it was like a little cute
Right.
cheetah running. And I said, do you want to reschedule for next week? It's stupid. And I also use the emojis to cheer up some of my coworkers.
I like that. But I have a question. What happens when you ever send an email and I got back a poop emoji? What does that mean if I say something it just comes back poop? I don't
I'm
understand.
the wrong person for that because I don't, the saying is that only boomers used emojis, but like the emojis came from millennials as far as I understand. I don't know, Gen X, whatever.
It came from Japan, but yeah. Japanese thing.
I can't answer that one for you. I don't know what it means.
I just never.
don't know.
But last night I was doing a conference call at a consulting thing in the Philippines at whatever it was, 2:00 in the morning. And what impressed me the most is they were very motivated to get their business moving forward and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked them, I said, what was the weather like there? And they told me it was 44. Well, that's 109 degrees. It was 109 degrees.
Nice.
And I said, well, you're indoors. They go, oh, we've got the air conditioner in here. We're fine. It's 92. So they were totally fine at 92 degrees.
Wow.
92 and they're okay. 92.
Well, it just goes to
Yep.
show you can get used to a lot of different things.
Well, it goes to show you that you know that we think that we can't adapt, or we think that we can't reach a goal.
Yeah.
We think we can't be flexible enough to get to the goal. And I think we can. I think the key is flexibility. I mean, are you flexible enough to get to the goal? Can you move around and go through the obstacles? Because a lot of times to reach your goal, there just might be a giant obstacle, and it's something you can actually get around.
There's a phase of acceptance. And I mean, one thing we haven't talked about really is it's okay to feel unmotivated sometimes. It's okay to get depressed for a day or a few hours or whatever. That's actually totally normal. It's abnormal to be depressed for 6 months or 12 months.
Right.
And you might need to see a professional, but don't, you don't want to like attack yourself or judge yourself for being down a little bit. So we go through these adjustment phases of adjustment. They're kind of like the stages of grief, and eventually you accept it and you adapt.
Well, I think acceptance is a big deal. I think it's very difficult to even diagnose or analyze the next step at all unless you're accepting where you are. And I think we all do it. We want to we want to achieve something. We want to take this next step without accepting where we are now. So it's kind of like if I'm on a staircase, if I don't know I'm on this step, I'm going to step up 2 steps up. It's kind of hard, right? I'm going to fall over.
You were making fun of my metaphors.
Well, what I'm saying is it's possible to fall up a flight of stairs. You can fall up a flight of stairs.
I often have trouble getting up to the next step because I haven't accepted the current step of the staircase that I'm on.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, it's very difficult.
So if you're farming on a staircase.
Oh no, you'll go to farming. Look, I don't want to have a guy throwing out bad metaphors judge my metaphor. It's the best metaphor I have. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't know. Now I'm starting to slap the microphone. I'm actually become a danger to my own mic. I'm now hitting the mic.
This is how you demotivate someone. You just criticize the heck out of them. And by the time we're done with this show, Garrison will be depressed. And he'll have to watch the show again.
Well, I mean, sometimes I'm just too arrogant to be offended. I think that's whatever that means. Sometimes, but sometimes I'm my natural humble self. So it just depends on the situation. So I keep slapping. I'm slapping my own mic. Anyway,
not a good thing to do.
Well, that's what this guard here is actually to protect the mic from me. That's what that's actually for.
That's true. I have one as well.
Yeah, there you go. So, but I think that to actually go back to your lousy metaphor, I think that if you are a farmer, right?
We're making this all up. Is it clear? All right. So if you're a farmer.
So if you're a farmer, God bless you. God bless you if you're a farmer out there.
That's true. You're probably getting paid not to grow something. So
right. You're right. You're getting paid a bunch of money not to grow corn. I like the guy that makes $10 million a year and not growing corn. That is an actual thing that actually happens.
I know.
Getting paid not to grow stuff. But
that's crazy.
But if you're a farmer and you are literally, again, you're not surrounded by the farm, you're not involved with the crops, if you're not where you can achieve your goals, then that's a big deal, meaning that sometimes we're not even set up or positioned to achieve the goal. I mean, are you set up? And to go back to what we're talking about, if you are depressed and looking at life through crap-colored glasses, it's quite difficult to go anywhere near your goal.
That's right.
Yeah,
you could use that crap in the field for fertilizer.
You could fertilize. Wait a second. Depressed farmers use the crap that is on your glasses to fertilize your.
The corn.
Yeah, that went nowhere, Brian. Yeah. Again, I adapted your idea and it didn't work. I would like to say that for the record.
Okay.
It's contagious. It's
at least we're collaborating.
We are definitely collaborating. But I was going to ask you a question, and you can ask me the same kind of question. What do you think? Is there a goal that you didn't really think you could achieve at all, but you just said, okay, in the back of my mind, or maybe you wrote it down. Was there a goal that you felt that you could not achieve, but yet you got there? A goal you felt you couldn't achieve, but you did in fact arrive?
That's a good question. I don't know if I thought I could sell things. Um,
Right.
I had a lot of resistance to it. Um, I didn't even accept that sales was necessary or that it
Right.
was okay. I thought it was basically manipulative.
Right.
Um, Fortunately, I was wrong, and I realized, oh, I buy stuff all the time, and sometimes salespeople help you with information, or they help you
Right.
choose the right product, or whatever.
Right.
So it's not all just like, hey, buy this snake oil. Um,
Right.
but it was still, there were a lot of, I used to be a major introvert, had no social skills,
Right.
couldn't do small talk, all kinds of problems. So it was a long road for me, uh, even after getting into comedy and doing more extroverted things like speaking. I was not great, but over time, I just got good at it because I had to, and developed my own style, and now I'm pretty effective at selling. You can't sell everybody. It's not always.
Right.
There's a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's not the right fit or whatever.
Right.
But now I'm pretty comfortable with it. So yeah. What about
That's a
you?
big.
Yeah.
That's a very, very big one.
Yeah.
I think for me, I really, when I left corporate America to start my own business, I got feedback when I was leaving that I didn't have the ability to have my own business.
Mm.
That I had ADD, and I had a couple of extra staffers that I had that in my department. It looked like I was kind of top heavy in my department. I think I was viewed, or I felt that I was someone who was not really good enough to go out and start my own business. I mean, I didn't have those types of entrepreneurial skills. And again, because I was quitting the company, they wanted me to stay. They offered me a bunch of money, and they pitched me on the idea, Garrison, you're really not an entrepreneurial person. We can make this work for you. They were pitching me in trying to keep me at that company.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to sell me the idea even more so. They didn't have what it took.
Yeah.
And so I went into business for myself, I think with a large dose of doubt of my ability to manage and effectively run my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out two things. Number one is that the secret to success is doing very little of what you do badly and a lot of what you do well. You're not going to get anywhere trying to get better at your weaknesses. That was not, it just wasn't, And I had a couple of strengths that were so big that to not do those all the time didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I reluctantly hired someone to handle some things early on to allow me to do a lot of what I did well. There's also kinds of business and clients and circumstances that I just didn't take on because I really wasn't that good at doing it. So I found that just by staying focused in my strengths, that I got better at what I already did well. And I think when you get really better at what you already do well, then you can compete.
That's a good point.
Then you can compete.
I did that with the way that I sell is kind of like problem solving.
Right.
And building rapport, which I found through, comedy and stuff.
Sure.
So I'm a consultative problem selling type of salesperson.
Yeah,
it's interesting. So what was your strength that you leveraged?
My strength was I was very good at meeting people and having initial conversations. I was very good at clearly explaining the value of what I did, but also very good at simplifying complex problems. And when someone was explaining something to me from a consultative situation, I could kind of put that back and simplify it. And at first I felt that my simplification was going to make me look like I didn't have enough value.
Yeah.
What I found out is that there were certainly a group of clients that simplification was really what they wanted.
I'm glad.
And especially at the highest level, like at the executive level, that clarity was golden. And
right.
I found that from a consulting, though the middle managers, wanted to complicate things and wanted to take maybe my simplification and kind of poo-poo it. When you talk to the CEO, they liked it, and I figured out who was writing the checks, and it wasn't middle management.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because right before you said that thing, that the thing you were afraid of was your weakness with your strength, I realized I always thought I was like too critical or I was too focused on the problem,
Right.
but with a little bit of tweaking,
Right.
that became my strength. So it's possible, think about these things you think you might not be able to do. And sometimes the thing you think is your weakness or that people don't like is actually your strength.
Well,
So,
that's a point that it's a tough one. I've used that in a presentation in consulting, but it's, to me, I have to be very careful with it. But since
yeah,
you've already brought it up,
yeah,
I have found that in coaching someone or helping someone, whether it's there to be a better leader or speaker or whatever, if I'm dealing one-on-one, I have found that quite often that the biggest fear they have and what they really perceive to be as their greatest weakness is in fact their strength.
yeah.
And it's a weird thing. There's a story about a guy I met. I wrote the story in a book, and he was about 500 pounds, 450 pounds. He's about 6'6", and his initial idea was that he was very self-conscious because he'd been a football player and he was just this big giant guy. But as I told him, I said, I when I met you at the convention, I saw you from across the room. I mean, a giant room. And I'm like, David, nobody can't see you. I've never seen no one's ever going to forget who you are.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Once you're in their office, they're going to remember. Everybody knows Big Dave. And that guy went on to just dominate in many businesses and concrete busy. He's founded these companies. He's done super, super well. And eventually he would go to these conventions and wear a giant red shirt. He would make it. He actually accentuated.
Yeah.
And he embraced that. And his that was his asset.
Yeah.
No one ever, if you ever met him, this guy's finger was as big as my head. He was just a big dude. And he was kind and he was very smart. You remember someone who's that articulate and that smart,
right?
Who's 6'6" and 500 pounds. Very interesting. And
you can do the same thing with introversion. I was afraid.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was too introverted, but what I've learned over time is that it made me a good listener, which means that my responses are going to be better. And I'm so in touch with myself that I can put myself in other people's shoes by imagining what they're experiencing. And that is helpful in all kinds of communication and sales, persuasion, marketing, everything. So,
well, I've heard a lot of sales managers say that what we'd love to do is to take our introverts and show them how that introvert mindset will help them sell to people who are like them.
Right.
Because a lot of buyers are introverts and they do not fare well with Mr. or Mrs. extrovert salesperson.
Right. That's right.
So it's almost like I had a guy goes, when I was working did some consulting for PricewaterhouseCoopers, he goes, we're bringing our nerds to talk to their nerds. And that's
that's really good.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to wind down. So there are a lot, we talked about a lot of things that can demotivate you, a lot of things that can motivate you. It's very important to get rid of those obstacles, whether they're obvious or hidden, so that you can, keep your energy good, keep focused on your goal, and go out there and achieve shit.
And go motivate some other people. That was great, Brian.
As I was approaching the end of the sentence, I kind of realized I was about to drive over a cliff, and I just kind of skidded out and totally screwed it up. So,
well, the thing about it is you took a quick left, but sometimes I've gotten there and I just gave up at the end. Like, I'm going to stop talking. But I think you made a good point, though, by the way. But I think that to keep in mind that sometimes if you're not feeling motivated, go try to motivate somebody else. I think motivating other people really allows you to be motivated. And to keep doing that, to make that part of your daily process, let me go motivate other people. So that's what
One last very basic tip.
Yes.
Make your bed, wash your dishes, clean your house. If you don't do those things, then you have to ask yourself, why don't I care about myself? Why do I have this negative attitude about myself?
Right.
That's part of self-esteem. And that's a very, very basic level. Just having an environment you can actually work in. An environment's not distracting or depressing. Make sure you do that.
Well, you've actually motivated me to fire my housekeeper. So that's what.
It's fine if she does it. Then you can be like, hey, I'm successful enough to be able to hire someone to do this.
I knew a guy years ago, a guy from Texas who said this. He goes, well, if you're being depressed, you need to go in there and clean your toilet. I'm like, what are you talking about? Get in there with a toilet brush. He would say, just get in there and clean it.
Like, here's another example. Like, COVID stuff's very depressing. So
Sure.
I'm thinking, what control do I have? Sometimes you feel like you have less control than normal. Hey, meat supply is going away. What should I do? Well, maybe I'll grow vegetables. I don't know. So you go from there to like actually looking on YouTube how to do it. Like I'm actually regrowing celery and green onions and kale right now.
Are you growing your own kale right now?
Yeah, I'm regrowing it and learning about vegetables. Yeah.
You're regrowing kale? What does regrowing mean?
That means you can buy like celery too. You buy celery, you cut off the bottom and you can eat the celery, but then you can put the bottom in a dish of water and it starts to grow more celery. So, every time that you've thrown away that root, you threw away more celery that's coming to you in a few months if you would just little stuff like that. When you feel like you don't have any control.
Right.
Think about what you could do and learn about it. Yeah.
That's true. When you think you don't have control, go do something that you do have control over, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if that means growing your own kale, then there you go.
Yep.
And
I named it John Kale.
John Kale?
Yeah.
You named your kale.
He's a musician. Anyway, that's a bad.
I don't know John Kale. I don't know, but I do know that if you're naming your kale, you probably might want to switch up your meds, maybe.
Or get on some. All right. Well,
here's the vegetables I've named. Before you eat them, let me introduce you to them.
This is Steve.
Steve the tomato.
All right. Well, that was remotely awesome.
Yeah, remotely.
How to get motivated. I'm Brian Carter, and
I'm Garrison Wynn.
That's correct.
It's Brian Carter. It's Garrison Wynn. Don't do this. I think we should pretend like that our system's freezing up and just go.
We should do that. We should have a sound that goes off like there's a snap. We go.
Bah.